Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Romjue with ARN, and welcome back to another episode of Industry Newsmakers. Today, we'll be talking about AI's growing role in rental car pricing and rental car rates. Joining me is Michael Meyer, the president and founder of Rate Highway. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with some basics. How do AI pricing models compare with known conventional pricing systems that many operations are using?
That's a great question because there's a common assumption that AI pricing systems completely replace conventional pricing systems. In reality, many conventional pricing systems in car rental are already very capable. They use rule-based automation and can process competitive data, utilization levels, and booking windows across thousands of pricing combinations. So in terms of speed and scale, both conventional systems and AI systems can ultimately perform very well. The biggest difference, Martin, is how they are set up and how they adapt. Traditional pricing systems are typically built around rules. A revenue manager defines those rules based on the company's strategy. For example, the system might be configured to increase prices when utilization or demand crosses a certain threshold, or to position a rate slightly above or below a competitor for specific car classes or rental durations. This approach provides very precise control. The revenue manager can define exactly how the system should behave in very specific situations. The trade-off is those rules may be configured in advance, and someone has to know and understand revenue management to anticipate scenarios, articulate responses to its logic, test it, and maintain it over time. Depending upon the complexity of the pricing strategy, the setup process can take significant time and it requires a skilled revenue manager. AI pricing systems approach this differently. Instead of asking the operator to configure dozens or even hundreds of rules, the logic is embedded within the trained model. The system analyzes historical patterns, competitive behavior, and operational data to determine how pricing should react. So, one of the biggest advantages of AI systems is that they are often much closer to being operational from the beginning. In many cases, they can produce almost immediately, while conventional systems may require more skilled revenue or pricing managers and a longer configuration process before they reach full effectiveness. One other difference, which appears when new data inputs are introduced. In a conventional rule-based system, if a new data point becomes available, let's say airline or hotel information, the revenue manager typically needs to decide how that signal, which is a common term used for data, should influence pricing and then design new rules around it. With AI systems, that work often happens on the vendor side. So the car rental operator doesn't have to worry about it. The provider trains the model to understand how the new data should influence pricing behavior. And once trained, the system can incorporate that signal automatically. So the trade-off between the two approaches is largely about control versus adaptability. Traditional systems offer very precise control over specific scenarios, but they require time and expertise to configure and maintain. AI systems tend to offer greater adaptability and are easier to implement initially, at least, but they offer slightly less precision when it comes to very narrowly defined competitive positioning rules.
So, what areas does AI improve when it comes to the pricing flexibility?
Well, if you remove all the marketing language, AI tends to improve pricing flexibility in three practical areas: readiness, adaptability, and speed of strategic change. So before explaining these, it's important to recognize that traditional rule-based pricing systems in car rental, they're already very capable. They can process competitive marketing data. They can process fleet utilization and booking windows across thousands of pricing combinations. In terms of speed and scale, rule-based systems can perform extremely well. So AI is not replacing those capabilities. The differences appear in how the systems are deployed and evolve over time. The first area is readiness. For our international customers, the first area is with the phone. Traditional pricing systems require the revenue manager to configure rules. So someone needs to define and articulate the pricing logic, determine how the system should respond to utilization changes and competitor movements. They got to test those rules and refine them over time. That process works very well, but depending upon the complexity of the strategy, it can take time to set up. So AI systems often reduce that initial configuration burden. Much of the logic is embedded within the trained model, which allows the system to begin producing useful pricing recommendations much sooner. In many cases, operators can begin working with the system almost immediately rather than spending weeks configuring rules. The second area, Martin, is adaptability. Rule-based systems respond exactly the way they were programmed. If a revenue manager anticipates a situation and writes the rule for it, the system will perform very well. AI systems approach this differently. Instead of requiring every scenario to be predefined, they can analyze relationships between multiple signals or data points, such as competitor pricing, booking pace, historical demand patterns, and that allows the system to react um, to these patterns that may not have been explicitly configured in advance. The third area is speed of strategic change. In AI systems, pricing logic is often organized in what the technology world calls models. The term can sound complicated, but in practice, a model is simply a packaged set of pricing rules and behaviors that define how the system reacts to market conditions. So if you're working with a traditional rule-based system, you might build dozens of individual rules to represent your pricing strategy. In an AI system, those same concepts are often bundled together inside of a model.
So, what does that all mean for the role of the rental revenue manager? How is AI both making their role more efficient and empowering them?
That's often a really scary question for a lot of revenue managers. But fortunately, one of the biggest changes with pricing automation is how it reshapes the role of the revenue manager. It doesn't replace them, it reshapes it. In a traditional environment, a large portion of the job is operational. Managers spend time lo looking at reports, checking competitor rates, looking at utilization levels, and making individual pricing adjustments across locations and car classes. The work's necessary, but it can also be very repetitive. Much of the day can be spent reacting to changes in the market rather than thinking about strategy. When automation and AI are introduced, the balances start to shift. The system can monitor competitors continuously, evaluate booking pace, and adjust prices across thousands of combinations automatically. This means that the repetitive work of making individual price changes is greatly reduced. As a result, the role of the manager evolves from manually updating prices to governing the price system itself. Instead of asking, what price should I charge today? The question becomes, is the pricing strategy working the way we expect? Managers spend more time defining the guardrails that guide the system. They decide how aggressive pricing should be when fleet utilizations increase, how the company wants to position itself against competitors, and how pricing should support broader business goals like fleet rotation and market share.
Mm.
So they also monitor exceptions. Even the best automated systems encounter unusual situations, special events, sudden fleet changes, or unexpected market behavior. Human judgment is still essential in those moments. So the job becomes less about manually adjusting individual rates and more about strategy, oversight, and interpretation. So in many ways, automation actually makes the role more important. The system can execute pricing decisions at scale, but the manager is still responsible for defining the strategy the system follows.
Mhm.
The future of revenue management is not about replacing people with algorithms, Martin. It's using automation to remove repetitive work so that experienced managers can focus on the strategic decisions that machines are not designed to make.
Now, for those rental revenue and fleet managers who've heard about ChatGPT, likely used it, Claude, which is become part of the business vocabulary.
Yeah.
If they want to make AI tech investments, what kind of benchmarks should they be looking for? What's a solid way to really get going on this?
That's one of the most common questions that operators ask, is what's the difference? How does AI work? What does AI really mean? But I think we should start with cost. I think the first thing that really separates all of this is what should this cost? And I'll answer your question directly in a little bit when I wrap this question up, because I think I want to focus on that first. Because in the hotel industry, for example, there's a well-known rule of thumb. Revenue management systems are often budgeted at around $10 per room per month. This benchmark helps hotel operators evaluate whether a technology investment makes sense relative to the scale of their operation. Car rental has never had a widely accepted equivalent benchmark, but a practical guideline is to think about it on a per vehicle basis. In my experience, budgeting around $6 per vehicle a month is a reasonable starting point when evaluating modern pricing systems that include both automation and competitive market information. That number reflects the reality that pricing automation is not just software. It usually includes several components working together. There's the pricing engine, there's the competitive market data used to understand the marketplace, and the system integrations that allow the pricing platform to receive operational data and updates rates automatically. This is another important factor operators should look at, and that's integration cost. Modern pricing systems rely on a two-way flow of information. The system needs to receive data such as reservations, booking pace, fleet availability, but also needs to push that updated pricing data back to the reservation or counter system. So some technology providers enable that data for under $100 a month, while others charge several $100s per month per location for that same capability. That difference can have a major impact on the total cost of ownership. So operators should also consider this in their examination of the market. So the key benchmarks, Martin, to consider are cost per vehicle per month, your integration costs. What does it cost to connect to your counter reservation system? And the market data intensity. How much market data do you need in order to remain competitive? Is it checking once per week, once per day, once per hour? These benchmarks that I'm providing are they're suggested in an effort to help operators understand the investment side of pricing technology. When it comes to performance benchmarks, how much improvement a company should expect in revenue, utilization, or pricing performance, that becomes a much more nuanced discussion. And results may vary based on market conditions, fleet mix, competitive landscape, how pricing strategy is implemented, so on and so forth. In this topic, I'll be exploring in much greater detail during my presentation at the ICRS in Dallas in May, where we will walk through some real-world examples and discuss what operators can realistically expect from modern pricing systems. So we'll talk all
All,
about that.
all right. Well, I know we could. Well, I know you're going to be getting more into this at the International Car Rental Show coming up May 15th. Just give us a real quick preview of what attendees can expect for this session.
Great, I'm looking forward to it. In Dallas in May, the goal of my session is to take this conversation a step further and focus on what pricing automation actually looks like in real operations. So there's a lot of discussion in the industry right now about AI, but many operators are still trying to understand where it fits, what problems it actually solves, and how it compares with the pricing systems they're already using today. So in the session, we'll walk through several real-world scenarios and examine how different pricing approaches behave under the same market conditions. We'll also spend time discussing the roles of the revenue manager going forward, because automation is scary, and does it remove the need for expertise? In many ways, as I said earlier, it actually elevates the role of the manager, shifting the focus from manually adjusting prices to governing strategy and overseeing the system. And finally, we'll address the question everyone asks: what kind of performance improvement should operators realistically expect from pricing automation?
And I certainly want to be clear when your session is occurring, which will be early afternoon, Friday, May the 15th at the Gaylord Texan in Dallas. Thanks a lot for joining us, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Martin.
Those of you who want more information about this topic, please go to autorentalnews.com, where Michael has written the feature of the month and goes into this topic in depth. Until then, and until the next episode, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again real soon.